Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and for this episode, we are joined by author and poet Saeed Jones to discuss his new poetry collection, Alive at the End of the World. Can I just say, this collection is insanely good. I cannot stress that enough. You all know poetry isn't really my thing, but this book, oh my gosh, it's the real deal. It's about grief, anger, chaos, memory, and all the things we're dealing with right now in America. Jones is also the author of the 2015 collection Prelude to Bruise and one of my favorite memoirs from 2019, How We Fight for Our Lives, which won the Kirkus Prize for nonfiction. Listen, if you take nothing else away from this episode, Saeed Jones can write. Remember, next week, Wednesday, September 28th, we will be discussing the Stacks Book Club pick, The Trees by Percival Everett with Lisa Lucas. If you're looking for any of the things we talked about on today's episode, be sure to click the link in the show notes to find everything we discuss. If you love the show and want more of it, head to patreon.com/thestacks and join the Stacks Pack. You'll get bonus episodes of our show, like our most recent one with good friend of the pod, Cree Miles, plus our virtual book club meetups, our bookish Discord, and more. If those perks sound exciting to you, or you just really want to show your love for this little Black woman-run indie book podcast, head to patreon.com/thestacks. Thank you to our newest members, Lola, Mikkel Banyas, and Jane Hunter. Thank you all so much, and thank you to everyone in the Stacks Pack. There truly would be no podcast without you all. Now, it's time for my conversation with Saeed Jones. All right, everybody. To say that I'm excited today would be like the understatement of the year. Many of you know I wrote a list of guests that I wanted to have before I ever recorded an episode of the podcast. And today I have one of those bucket list guests. It is author and poet Saeed Jones. Saeed, welcome to the Stacks.
Hi, Tracy. We did it. We did it.
We're here. So when your memoir came out in 2019, I had sort of just started the show, but I got an arc and I was like, I'm going to get him on the show. And your team was like, sorry, you're not fancy enough. So now I'm finally fancy enough for you.
I'm here. You know, I was just a comet making my way across the stars to you. Just took a little bit longer.
We just needed a little more time to marinate. Now we have even more things to talk about. So
That's true.
Before we get into like some random stuff, we have to talk about your new poetry collection, Alive at the End of the World. So in about 30 seconds or so, can you tell folks what it's about?
Sure. In some ways, I think of this new book as a kind of a sequel to my memoir, How We Fight for Our Lives. You know, at this point in my life, I'm 10 years into the experience of grieving my mother who died in May of 2011. And so then, 10 years finds us at this moment in the present in the midst of a devastating pandemic. And I think it's fair to say, that kind of phrasing of, I feel like it's the end of the world. I feel like what's going on? Is everything, I just wanted to drill into that sentiment and to see what I could uncover. And I think for me, Alive at the End of the World is kind of me connecting personal grief with a sense of collective and maybe even historical grief, and this sense that honestly, it's a state of being, the sense of the apocalypse. It's a vibe.
Yes, it is. It is the only vibe these days. We both share that we lost parents. My father died in 2012.
I'm sorry.
And one of the things that we've been talking about on the show recently is grief. We had an author on who wrote a book about grief, and we've been talking a lot about like the acute grief that you feel, like personal, private grief. And then there's like the communal grief and the societal grief. And we talked about like grieving America and what it means to be Black in America and like how that affects how we grieve and all of that. And then I read your collection and I was like, wow, this is like the exact book that I needed in this moment. I'm wondering how, 10 years after the death of your mother, how you're thinking about grief differently than maybe you were 5 years ago or 3 years ago when your other book came out, or like how these things have shifted for you.
Sure. I mean, the first two words that come to mind are humility and gratitude. One, because, the last few years, what people are having to endure, and again, present tense, in terms of the loss and the circumstances, feeling abandoned, by our government, by each other at times, people who are dealing with, being immunocompromised, long COVID, all of these things, like a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm just on my own, like, are we even, and so I really feel a sense of deep humility because as devastating as it was to lose my mother, I never felt alone. I never felt abandoned in the circumstance. I never was made to feel ashamed of what I was going through, And I just remember as I was working on this book, thinking about people who had to say goodbye to their loved ones, their parents, on iPads over the phone, because many people couldn't even, be bedside. And I was like, wow, I was able to have an organic bereavement process. And then the second part, it's like the gratitude is, there were times when I wasn't sure I would be able to keep living. I was really upended, and I struggle with depression and anxiety. But as you know, grief is different. They're siblings, but grief does kind of come at you in a different way. And I feel such gratitude to have been able to keep living, to find my footing, even as here we are in the future. And it's like, well, great. Your
Glad
reward,
I made it.
your reward is like dealing with all this bedlam and chaos. But I do have gratitude. And I think, as I'm sure you understand, our relationship with the people we lost, it doesn't end, it simply changes. And I can feel, at times when I'm really lucky, like I can feel my mom being like, yep, I knew you could do it. I knew you would get there.
Yeah, I could so relate to that. So you wrote a memoir and you've written 2 books of poetry. I am not very good at poetry, like reading it. I really struggle. And I did not struggle with this book at all. And when I finished it, I texted an author friend of mine who I knew had read it also. And I was like, it's really good. And they were like, yeah, Saeed just knows how to get out of his own way.
Oh,
and
wow.
So I'm wondering,
Phrase.
how do you get out of your way? Like, how do you write these poems and just say, okay, I did it, and like walk away?
That's a good. I'd love to go talk to this person and be like, how did I do it? What is it? What is it about the writing that, no, really, because that's the best, I get in my way a lot. I do. I think for me, once I have, and it can take years, well before the writing has started for a book project. But I think if I think about the work I've published, once I've been able to hone in on the intention and locate it's usually me, right? Because usually the writing is kind of based on me. I'm often drawing from personal narrative. Once I'm able to hone in on the version of myself that is best equipped to help us understand whatever idea, it almost feels like acting. I think particularly with poetry, I'm using, and this book is pretty, I wanted to embody chaos. So there's a lot of formal, I'm throwing a lot at you.
We're going to get there. Don't worry.
Good. So there's a lot going on. But when you set that dynamic aside, I think they're almost like monologues. And I think I just really try as best I can to like lock myself in to the perspective of whatever that voice is. Like early in the book, there's a poem titled A Memory where, now in retrospect, I realize it's like, oh, it's a zombie. It's someone who's dead and is like angry at how we kind of move on from the dead, who's like, y'all aren't going to forget me. And I think once I was able to just hone in on that deep need, what would it feel like? What would it feel like to be so angry about being forgotten that you could almost literally reanimate yourself? Then the music, the rhythm, everything is just serving that need. And I think that's how I get out of my way. I think.
I like that. I like that. I mean, it's a kind of a hard question to answer because like how you don't only know when you're in your way when you sort of like look back.
Right.
Like it's hard to know when you're fucking yourself up in the moment.
Right. Absolutely. And I guess the other question and the other part of that is, it takes time and you're getting to see the polished, edited, my editor, Erica Stevens, is an incredible collaborator, so a lot happens. But I think, often when I'm in my way, it's because I'm thinking too much about everything outside of that dynamic.
Right.
You know, it's like
you haven't gotten like the specificity.
Yeah, I'm worrying about like the reader. I'm worrying about, oh, what are other people? You know, it's like you kind of have to isolate. You have to take yourself to the deepest, quietest part of the woods almost. I think to really kind of, for me, to write the kind of poem I want to write.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's say you've written a bunch of poems and you know you're working on this project. Is there a lot of like, this one's in, this one's out? Oh no, I want that one back. Like, are you writing with the idea of a book, or are these things that you're writing over time and you're like, oh, that one I wrote 5 years ago, maybe I can make it. Like, how does the actual collection come to be?
That's a great question. It's pretty chaotic.
Fair.
I will say some of the oldest poems in the book are the numbered grief poem, you know, grief number 913, grief number. So I knew I had this idea of the different kinds of losses, the different things we can grieve. You know, I think, you know, there's a poem about, you know, hookups at bars, and it's clear you kind of like grieving decisions.
Yeah.
You're grieving decisions. So I had that thread, you know, and this idea of what are the things we're grieving in real time, which really feels like alive at the end of the world, endings and beginnings, loss and continuation. And then I wrote the first poem that opens the book, which is centered in a mass shooting. And it's the title poem, Alive and in the World. So I wrote a series of those poems where I wanted to explore the different ways, in my mind, an apocalypse functions and what it means to us, how it creates meaning for us. And then, I don't know, you kind of, it's like, for me, it's like I end up with like not a handful, I would say 20 to 25 poems. Let's start there, where I see enough themes. And then out of that, the decision is, what do I want to write more of? And what do I feel like, okay, we've got it. You got enough of XYZ theme. And so what do I need to focus on more? You know, like I remember getting a note from my editor about desire. She was like, desire is the twin of grief. So how can we, you know, bring more desire into the book? And so you begin to see that develop, you know, where I'm kind of like, the world can kill itself, but I'm going to have an orgasm tonight, damn it. You know?
You know, like your own, baby.
I still have a body, you know? So so that's kind of, it's like you kind of have like maybe what ultimately will become half of a manuscript. And to me, I begin to think of like, okay, what are the new questions emerging? And what are questions I feel like I'm satisfied with the answer and thus can go in a different way? And then what was really exciting for me is that, it was exciting. Then last summer, Paul Mooney died. And it was interesting being, you know, already pretty deep in this project about grief and loss and history and everything. And then a comedian who I liked, Paul Mooney. I liked his work. I mean, I was a big fan, but I was really bowled over when he died. Like like so much came at me. And because I was in the middle of I was like, well, let's examine, like, why are you having this? And so out of that loss, then I wrote, it was like quite an undertaking for me, like an entire sequence of poems that I decided to write in the order that they appear in the first poem that was inspired. So I kind of gave myself a new project. And that was an interesting like last act in the process, because it challenged me. One, suddenly I was doing research and reading all of these books and watching documentaries and everything to learn about all of these people. But also it was like making myself go way out to find unexpected connections to the central theme. And it was wild. Like, I didn't know that Aretha Franklin's mother died when she was a little girl and of a heart attack, similar to my own mother. You know, so it's like you think you're just writing about this figure and, oh, how interesting learning about Little Richard or Luther Vandross. And then it's like it always comes back to the center. It's incredible.
Right. You should, I don't know if you have or not, but you should read Shine Bright by Danielle Smith.
Okay.
It's about Black women in pop music.
Oh, Danielle Smith, the music.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I love her. Yes.
It's so great, but there's a huge section on Aretha Franklin. And I didn't know that information either until I had read that book. And then when I got to your book, for whatever reason, kind of what you're saying, your book is sort of like the thesis of this year of this podcast, like grief, Black pop culture. We did White Negroes, that book, White Negroes by, and like, I feel like that's in here. We had Jason Reynolds on talking a lot about like Breathing, and that really popped out when I read the That's Not Snow, It's Ash, like that, like there's just been this book for whatever reason was the exact book that I felt like I needed, and like that feels like this year of the podcast. So I just think it's interesting, similar to what you're saying.
That's such an honor. That's such an honor. And one, I love books that take me to other books. I love culture that helps me connect the dots to other parts of culture. But also I'm just so honored because that was one of the intentions. And that's why I say it's a bit of a sequel to the other memoir, because though it's a poetry collection and it's not all, first person, it's not always Saeed as on the page as a character, I wanted you to get the sense that you were getting almost a time capsule in like Saeed as like a grieving apocalyptic historian, just what's going on. And you're right. I mean, Danielle Smith, her podcast, Black Girl Songbook, is so important to me. I'll be listening to one of those episodes and just bawling.
Crying.
The Natalie Cole episode.
Oh my God. And then I couldn't stop listening to This Will Be. I couldn't stop. My Spotify was like, you've listened to one song in the last 7 years and it's this.
Spotify's like, are you okay?
Are you okay?
So I love that you're picking up on that, because that was really true for the experience of creating the book. I wanted to, as a poet, kind of capture what it feels like to, one, be having these ideas, but also, I'm a consumer of culture too. And I love Jason Reynolds and Breathing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh. So it makes me really happy. So people who are listening, if you haven't read the book yet, I think you need this poetry collection. And I never say that. Usually I'm like, you might be okay without it. I don't know. But this one, I'm really like, this is one of the ones.
Thank you.
And so the other thing that I love about this book and you, and just like from the moment that we got on today, is you're so energetic and funny, and you find the jokes and things, and that's so present in this collection. Like there's like The Dead Dozens, which I think if I had to pick is probably my favorite poem besides the first
Okay,
poem.
then you are a wicked person.
Yeah.
I love that.
I was like reading that one being like, this is doing a lot for me. And then I was like, this is not the kind of poem you want to admit that you like. But it was the first one, and then this Dead Dozens one. And there's like this humor and this sort of like, that's life of it all. And so how is it hard to bring that part of yourself into something like this? Or is that just who you are and it comes with you no matter what?
I love that you love The Dead Dozens. I mean, it's one of my favorite little demons too. I have found it's been difficult for me to write my humor, my laughter into my books. I laugh a lot. I was listening to this week's episode of Vibe Check, the podcast I'm doing with Sam Sanders and Zach Stafford, and I was texting my boy. I was like, I'm very giggly this week. You just hear me like just kind of laughing in the background a lot, even as we're talking about really serious stuff. And that's just how I am. And I think it's showing up in my writing more, perhaps because I'm more confident. And I would like to think because I'm a better writer, because I want everything to have impact and intention. I don't want someone to think I'm just being silly to be silly, so to speak. And so The Dead Dozens is a good example of there's a lot going on, but it's also rooted in the tradition of the dozens. It's also, there's been a lot of thematic work with grief at that point in the book. So I hope you can understand where that speaker is, why he is being kind of jaded or cynical with what he's going through. And then, all of the history and the examinations of anti-Black racism throughout the book, so that when you get to that last stanza, it lands, and so I think it was like, figuring out how humor could function, like rhythm or repetition, and I don't know. I think humor is one of the highest forms of art. It's really hard. So hard. Oh my gosh. It's really difficult. It's
hard.
Much easier, I think, to be, kind of dramatic and serious, and I love that. I love that key, that register. It's much easier for me to access that than for me to. And it's weird. It's one thing for me to be silly just like I'm talking to you or in conversation. It's very different for me to be in kind of writer mode, focusing on line breaks and still be able to access humor. And I'm proud. I feel like I'm just getting into it. I'm just starting. But this is definitely, I think, the most humorful. Oh my God. Humorous. The most humorous book of mine.
I feel like what's hard about... Well, so I was an actress, I was in theater, and I feel like what's easy, at least in that way, about like doing dramatic performance versus comedic is that to do dramatic, you just have to get vulnerable and open up. But to do comedy, you have to get vulnerable and open up, and you have to calculate. Like you have to figure out what the joke is and how it works. Whereas like if it's just like a scene where you're crying, it's like I just have to access the crying.
Right. Yeah.
And so I feel like it's like you're saying, like it takes a little more skill because there's that added layer of like I have to be honest, it has to be truthful, but it also has to have a punch and it has to work with wherever I am and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, form. So we've done poetry on the show a few times for book club. Like once a year we do a poetry collection, and I always have a poet on to help talk about it. And we have landed on the debate of this show, which has to do with punctuation, line endings, and form when it comes to performance versus reading of a poem.
Okay.
I, as I just mentioned, come from a theater background. So I feel very strongly that line endings are to be honored when you read a poem. But every time I ever hear a fucking poet read a fucking poem, they just go straight to the punctuation. And so my question to you is, how do you feel and think about line endings versus punctuation? Like, what do you honor? And is it different for you when you're thinking of someone reading it off the page versus saying it out loud? I know that you think about that because in the notes about the Luther Vandross poem, you talk about how it should be difficult to say the words, like performance-wise.
That poem in particular, yes.
Yeah, so like I know that's something you're thinking about. How much are you thinking about the reader's experience of reading the poem? You know, like all of those questions. It's the central poetry question of this podcast.
Yeah, this is a rich line of questioning.
It's a lot.
I think I would say, okay, for the reader holding the book in their hands or looking at it on their screen, I think form, punctuation, line endings, enjambment is important to visually, and if you're reading, and I hope you feel, encouraged to read my poems out loud to yourself or to your friends or whoever, to kind of guide you to kind of recreate a Saeed Jones reading experience. I'm not there with you. I'm not. There is an audio. There will be an audio book of
and it's you reading it.
At the end of, it's me reading it.
Great,
yeah,
great.
So that will be an option. But that's a lot of what I'm thinking about on the page. How can I recreate or help the reader recreate that organic experience for themselves, because I'm not there. If it was just like a block of text, you just have very little information. And sometimes I will use a block of text, but I want you to understand the intentions there. In terms of me reading from this book, I think of my books, particularly my poetry collections, as living texts. And so I'm never going to read the same poem the same way twice. It's exciting actually to find new opportunities for rhythm. I don't want to go like off book. Right. I don't want to go somewhere where you're like, if someone were holding the book, during a reading, they're like, what the hell is he?
What is happening?
But yeah, I do think it's important to respond to the space, to respond to the color. There are poems in the book that, like, actually the Dead Dozens. I mean, I'm still learning how to read it out loud. And because it's very different if I'm just like reading it in the audio booth, during the audiobook, and then reading it in front of an audience, and what's the tone and color that I need to access. So yeah, I think the punctuation and the line breaks and enjambment are really important for the reader on the page to guide them. I think a lot of people are intimidated by poetry, which has everything to do with the canon, our education system, the way we are made to feel. I think most of us, like, poetry is this sacred domain of dead white people. And it's almost like, like scripture or something, just inaccessible, and so I'm trying to invite you in. That's what I'm always trying to do. I'm always trying to lure you in and then work on you. Right. It's almost, all the poems in a way are traps, where, I'm finding a different way to kind of seduce a reader, and then, hopefully we can like get to some hopefully unexpected but meaningful idea together. And so as a reader, when I'm in front of people, I'm trying to, now I'm using performance and all of those other tools.
Right.
So I don't know. I just want it to be good. That's such a, but I don't, it's not, I'm not a strict constitutionalist.
Okay.
I guess is what I'm trying to say.
You're not like me. I just love a rule. And I think for me what it is that I feel very insecure about reading poetry.
Okay.
And so I'm like, what is the author trying to tell me so that it will help me understand this better? So I'm like, okay, what are my clues? And then I get so stressed out that I'm like, this doesn't fit like what I think this, you know what I mean? Like,
And see, that's the thing. For me, it's like if you were getting ready to read some of my work, to me, it's almost like I hope that I've written and structured the poem in a way that's actually liberating for you as a reader, where you feel, to build up. Because it's kind of like, there are really intelligent people who, when they talk about their expertise, it's like dispiriting. Like you just like you leave the lecture being like, well, I will never even attempt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's a type of really intelligent, talented person where it's empowering. And you leave and you want to learn more. And that's when you're like, let me go pick up those other books. Let me, let me pick up a copy of White Negro because the way Saeed like embodied appropriation was really interesting. That's what I want. And so I hope that the way I use, form is, thrilling. I hope it colors you and you're willing to kind of take risks in the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
I didn't think I'd be making. Why did I think I'd be making like jokes about constitutional law?
Like,
I didn't
why are
see
you
that.
like the new Supreme Court justice? Someone
Look
call Katanji.
out. Don't
Girl,
give
you're
me a
out. You've been
robe.
replaced. Okay, so speaking of form and all of this, you have a poem in the book that is a sideways poem.
Yes.
Can you please tell me what you're trying to tell me with that? Because those poems are the ones where I'm like, okay, like I'm feeling Dead Dozens. It's like these little stanzas, like these little boom chakalakas. I know what's going on. And then you get to the one that it's like, I have to turn the whole book. And I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to be doing here? Like, I feel scared.
Good. That was the intention. That was the
stress
beginning.
me out.
I mean, because so much of what I was thinking about, particularly, obviously when I was writing the book, but also when it became time to think about structure and arranging the poems, which is always very exciting. I was interested in how can I productively destabilize the reader. So like that's what, like I said, like luring you in, and you get a few poems. You're like, oh, okay, I know, and then it's like, and now there's a poem on its side, and everything about that poem to me is truly chaotic. It's upsetting. I mean, the speaker is really going through it. What I say about grief in that poem is, pretty wild, and the ideas that I'm working through, like this kind of you can't tell. I feel as you're reading it if the speaker's in a good place or not. Right. Like you don't know, like, is this a reliable or unreliable? I wanted you to be on your toes.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important kind of reading sensibility for that poem. And so, and then part of it was also the length. I really wanted to preserve the length because it does actually reward if you kind of follow it and reading it out loud, it pays off. And then I was like, oh, we turned it on its side. I never thought I would publish a poem, a sideways poem, will I ever do it again? We will see. But I hope that like exactly your response was what I wanted, where you're
good.
Wait a minute. I
got the answer.
I wanted Tracy to be like, what the hell is going on? And then you turn the page and you see me immediately kind of nervously second guessing the title. And so then
right.
So I just wanted to, I don't know. I do know. It was both thinking about, again, like what is the apocalypse? It's that sense of structure and systemic failure, like before your very eyes. But it's also kind of like your own intuition and wisdom, like suddenly you're questioning it, Right. And I wanted the reader to feel that way as they're reading a poem by a speaker who's clearly equally destabilized.
Right. Okay, so I got the answer right.
You got it.
A+ on the poetry test.
You're very Hermione about this. Are you a Virgo? What's your sign?
I'm not. I'm a Leo.
Okay, all right.
Leo, Aquarius.
I love a good Leo.
Yeah, but I feel like a Virgo in my heart a lot of the times. I really do.
You're like, did I pass the test? Is there extra credit?
Yeah.
You forgot to assign homework.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like I love a rule, a tech. I love homework. I'm like, great, this is what I have to do. Like my checklists have like actual little boxes next to everything so I can check them off. It's the joy. Okay, but so here's the other thing about what you've done that's sort of in this line is you have this section of notes where you sort of explain the poems, but you add context for the reader. And as a person who loves to be right and know, this was maybe a thing that I didn't know that I loved more than anything in the world, because it was helpful to me. I went back. So I read the book without knowing the notes. Then I went back after I read the notes and reread some of those poems with what you had said and was like, wow, I got some of that. I didn't get some of that. And, whatever. There's not really a question. I guess the question is, why did you give us this sort of notes sheet in this way? Like, I've seen notes where it's like, this was published in Guernica or whatever, but not notes that were like, hey, this poem about Whitney Houston has to do with this book that I read or this movie that I watched. And like, there's one that's like, this is a nonfiction poem, or like, this is me dealing with the death of my mother at the time, and this is me dealing with the death of my mother 10 years later. And so I'm just wondering, like, why you gave that to us. And do you think that other poets would look down on something like that? Because I feel like so many poets are like, if you don't get it, you don't get it. And like, you were sort of like, if you don't get it, like, here's a hint.
Right. I mean, I think for me, it was in part specific to this book. I mean, even the epigraphs page, where I'm drawing from Frank B. Wilderson and Alexander Chee,
which is this month's book, or which was last month's book club pick for the Stacks. Another tie-in to this season.
I love
anyway,
it.
Sorry, go ahead.
Organic. It's like a spider web. I love
yeah.
it. But yeah, and already, there's some kookiness going on that page. And so part of me, again, was like thinking in terms of structure, our assumptions about books. Like you said, usually a note section is very staid and, almost like, not boring, but like brutally pragmatic. Often note sections are literally just maybe like an obscure term, and then like to like let you know where the work previously appeared. And I was like, oh, let's destabilize that. I mean, like the note for the Little Richard poem is essentially an essay onto its own. And just kind of working with that. And so that was one thrill. And then the other is I like the idea of, I enjoyed structuring this book. I was very intentional about what appears when, because I wanted it to hit the reader in a certain way, but also I wanted to create an opportunity for a reader who really enjoyed the book to have another rich experience. You can never like read a book for the first time. Like that's a very special experience, right? But I love that, like you mentioned with the notes, maybe you can go back to a poem with a new color. And like, it's not snow, it's ash, like you go, you're like, oh, okay. Saeed has a certain, like, this poem means something to him in a very specific way. So yeah, I just love the idea of chaos and that like, when is Saeed done? Like, are we free yet? Like, is he, what's going, can I go to the restroom? Like what's, I liked that, keeping you on your toes, but also, yeah, I don't know. And maybe the other thing is, if I'm trying to write into and about the experience of this systemic failure, being betrayed by so many of our rites, histories, and rituals, part of what we're grieving is context. Part of what we're so freaked out about is that it's like, we tell people like, read the room. How can you read the room in 2022? It's just like, it's total confusion, disarray, disorder. And so I think also it's almost like nice at the end of this being like, okay, here's a little bit, baby. Like
that's how I felt. I was like, thank you.
Yeah, just a little.
And the thing that's so funny about that too is like, for me, I actually felt like I understood the majority of this collection as I read it through the first time, which is a very rare experience for me. It's happened like with Nate Marshall's Finna. Like I really connected with that poetry collection. I felt like I got a lot of it off the bat. But having this little like, okay, here's a hint. I was like, thank you. I really appreciate
I love what he does with I guess it's not quite doppelgangers, but the other Nate Marshall that just following that line of inquiry.
Oh my God, so
brilliant.
Good.
Yeah. And again, with the notes, because I worked on it, like I would any other poem. It had several drafts. And if I felt that I was explaining a poem from a space of insecurity, I cut it out.
Yeah.
It's because there aren't notes for like every poem. The intention is it's not like a key guide, at the end of like a study guide or anything like that. It's more like adding a new color or often creating an opportunity to take you somewhere else. Like I hope you after reading the Luther Vandross poem, you have an experience and then you read the note. And I hope you're inspired to read Craig Moore's incredible biography of him, So kind of extending the life of the experience.
Yeah. Did you ever read Lacey M. Johnson's book, The Reckonings? Are you familiar with that book? So her notes section in that book is similar to what you've done, where it's like, it's not notes like this is the source or whatever. It's not like a bibliography essentially, but it's similar where she like talks about different essays and different moments. And I'd never seen anything like it before. And then reading this, I was like, oh, I just like these notes because I know how much work goes into writing these books, and I know how much research everyone's doing, and it's interesting to think about how you were thinking about what you were writing.
Right. Yeah. And I think again, like as I was saying about like our kind of national cultural understanding of poetry for a lot of people. Again, it's intimidating. It's kind of, it's on this pedestal. And I think, I want to break that down. And there are different ways to do that in terms of subject matter, but also again, like even with the notes, I hope it's like, I'm inviting you in. I always want to feel like you are being brought in to the experience because I trust myself. And I know a lot of what I'm doing is complicated and I'm okay with, I don't know, embracing the reader. I to your earlier question, I do and did have some mentors who aren't fond of notes, who aren't, and I get that. I think it depends on what you're working with. Like, when I work with emerging writers who are writing across languages, I don't think we need to be like translating language to people. I think it's like, let them do the work. Just as, we as English, inflict our biases on people of other languages. But I don't know. I just think in a book about there's just like a lot going on. And these cultural figures. And again, because so many, I'm trying to think of an example. With a poem about Whitney Houston and her longtime love, Robin Crawford, with that poem, again, I just wanted to get to the moment. I just wanted to get to this very, very specific, intimate, soft moment of confession, really. That's really what that poem is, and to me, that's rich and worthy. But after I finished the poem and I'm moving on with the book, I was still haunted by the fact that Robin never actually got to listen to the last voice message she got from Whitney Houston. Like that just messed me up. And anyone who's lost a loved one will tell you, I remember when I lost my phone at one point, years and years ago, and I was not able to recapture all of the voice messages and stuff of my mom. And eventually I lost the sound of her voice. And so that stayed with me. And so that's kind of what's undergirding that note is that I just really felt, it is interesting from a historical perspective, but also the people who get that, get it. And I wanted to honor it in its way.
I love that so much. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Valentine's Day is upon us and I've got love on the brain. Love for books. Duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind the scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Okay, we're back. I want to talk about the cover.
Yay!
It's so good.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, I feel like you've kind of given me the answer to crack the cover, which is like chaos, humor, a little destabilizing. Mm-hmm. But how much were you involved in the cover? Like, were there different options, or I know sometimes it's like they sent you a cover and you're like, this is perfect, I love it. So talk about your experience with this one.
Right. I guess I have been actually pretty involved in all of my covers. This cover, so it's a photograph by Lola Flash. Lola Flash is a friend, someone I think of as an artistic mentor. Lola is a queer Black person and one of the original members of ACT UP, the AIDS activism group, and so I was really honored in this book about the future and the peril that the cover is by a queer elder, that the foreword is by D.A. Powell, again, someone else I think of as a queer mentor and elder, connecting the past, the present, and the future is really important to me. And then, so Lola has a series of photographs. This is Lola in the photo. That's Lola in this suit. Lola was arrested for weed possession at one point and it was like, fuck the system, legalize marijuana, pay reparations to Black people who've had their entire lives upended by the war on drugs. So she had this prison jumpsuit and she was just like thinking about it. And then she came across this helmet. And so it's just like really interesting, like this idea of, to me, this Afro-futuristic image that's also directly connected to the war on drugs, to America's incarceration system. And and then the image, because that's the series, but the specific image itself, there's something about this shiny luxe car. I mean, it is so beautiful. It's reflecting it's just so cool. But this person had to get out and push it.
Through the grass. Not even
grass,
on a road.
What's going on? And so, one, it's an arresting image because I think it's, an unexpected combination of things. But also just to me, the poem of the cover is, the shiny, expensive future we were promised in the end is a burden that now a Black queer person has to get out and push forward. That's like, and ain't that what it is? Ain't that what we're dealing with?
Holy cow. Wow. I see that you're a poet with your use of language there. Is there anything that's not in this collection that you wish was?
Oh gosh. Is there anything not? I mean, probably. Let me think. I was a pretty brutal editor with this book. Like Prelude to Bruges, you'll notice is much longer. It's it's a lush book. And this book, I was like, I don't have time for lushness. This is like MTV Unplugged because the speaker's running for his life kind of throughout the book. I don't know. No, I'm okay with it. I'm good for now.
Fine too.
Ask me in a year.
Yeah. I know we're doing this before the books even come out. So you're still.
The thing what I will tell you what I've learned is you never have to be done writing with an experience. And as I say in one of the poems, Date Night, it's not up to me when I get to stop crying. I think at the time that I finished How We Fight for Our Lives, and this is like laughable now in retrospect, but I was like, okay, and now I'll never have to write about my mom again. Like I've done it. I'll never have to write about. I've done it. I've put it down, and now we can close that cover. And of course, it's not done. And it changes, and here we are 10 years later, and it's different, and there are ideas to discover and examine still. So I think out of that experience, I think I'm okay because I've learned that, like, even if, in the middle of the book tour, I realized, I would have loved to have more of Whitney Houston in the book. Well, damn it, I could write more Whitney Houston poems, down the line. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so we always talk with authors about how they write, like where you are, how many hours a day, how often. Do you have music on or no? Do you have snacks or beverages? That part's very important. Are there rituals? Like set the scene of sort of how you write, and maybe tell us if it's different when you're writing poetry versus prose, if there's any difference in how you approach it.
It is different. I will say for this book, part of it was the pandemic.
Yeah.
Most of my books are written around the world. Most of my books are usually written like half in the United States, half wherever the hell I go as a Sagittarius. And you know, I get a lot of work done in cafes in Mexico City or Berlin or wherever. This was all written at my desk in my living room here in Columbus, Ohio. I find now I prefer to do my writing early in the morning. So with this book, I would wake up early in the morning. Ideally, I was waking up around 6 to write, but what I would try to do is if I woke up, I woke up.
Okay.
So if I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, and often, and when I say woke up, it's like I realize like my eyes are closed, but I'm starting to revise a poem in my head. Instead of going, oh, I'll get to it later, it was like, just get up. Just get up and go to your desk and take a nap after, you know? I think that's helpful for me. One, there's something about the dreaminess, the quiet, but also for me earlier in the morning, it's like too early, like the dog isn't ready to go for a walk yet. My phone isn't vibrating. Nothing is happening on Twitter that feels demanding or especially interesting.
Right.
And so I'm able to kind of protect that space. And because, again, this book was really about capturing a specific kind of time. I mean, I was writing in pretty rapid succession. I mean, I remember like the Whitney Houston poem. I was cooking lunch. I was grilling some salmon, and at the time I would use like my refrigerator as a dry erase board.
Oh.
And I had written a version of the title on the fridge. And I wrote it, and then I went back to working on lunch, and then I wrote like the first line, so I didn't forget it. And then I wrote the second, and then the next thing I was like, okay, wait, and I just had to pull the plug on my little George Foreman grill and run across my apartment to like get to work on it. So yeah, this was actually it was almost like. I am not trying to romanticize the pandemic because it was brutal. And honestly, there were moments where I was literally pulling out my hair, which you see in one of the poems. But last summer was a very fruitful time for me. It was really spring into early fall. I was working on these poems. And so, I don't know, it was almost like I tried to make it into like a residency space. And waking up early in the morning, like I'm like, my mornings are always the same. The evenings are
right.
always up to question. And so, yeah, that was it. No music. I like having tea, coffee.
What kind of tea?
I love a good throat coat tea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know, what is it? I think there's like star of anise in it, that like licorice-y flavor. Yeah, that's it. No snacks. No, I've never been a good snacker.
Wow, I'm sorry for you. It's like one of my many joys in life.
I should learn to snack. Yeah.
It brings so
I'm
much
the person
joy.
that's like, I'll eat the whole bag of,
That's also me.
you know.
I keep all my snacks in the kitchen, but I work in a different room. So I'll like get up and like go get a handful of goldfish and then come back and like do work. And then when it's gone, I get up again. Let me get my steps in.
LOL. I'm trying to think what else was helpful. Something I find that's generally true for me is it helps to have some sense of like, as I'm wrapping up a writing session, and I, particularly with poetry, an hour or two. With the memoir, with prose, yeah, I might go 3 or 4 hours, and that's about it. And even that felt like a marathon. But I try to have some sense of where I'm starting the next day.
Okay.
Whether it's, I know I like where this draft is, but I think there's more revision to be done, or having the beginning of an idea for the next thing. It's very rare and usually very unproductive for me to like wake up and just go to my desk and I have like no idea. I'm not just like sitting down looking at a blank page. Like, let's see where it goes.
Yeah. Okay. What's a word you can never spell correctly on the first try?
Restaurant.
Oh, okay.
Fighting for my
Saeed.
life every time.
We've had a lot of words. I'm a terrible speller. Okay. Everyone has a word I cannot spell. The only word I can spell that people can't spell is restaurant, but it's you, Angelina Jolie, Quentin Tarantino, Jason Reynolds, all of you are restaurant people. It's like the upper echelon of can't spell restaurants is like the cream of the crop. It's just, I don't know what is going on with brilliant people, but you guys can't spell restaurant, and I feel sorry for you.
All the vowels just are constantly rearranging themselves in front of. Nope.
I love it. I
don't think I've spelt restaurant the first time with correctly in my life. I love it. Well, you're in very good elite company. I love that. Wow.
It's really an incredible list. Okay, just really quickly, you have a new podcast with Sam Sanders and Zach Stafford. It's called Vibe Check. It's great. There's only been so we're recording a little right after it started. So by the time folks listen to this, there will be more episodes, but there's only been 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. How is that for you? Doing something that's conversational, there isn't that same ability to edit in the way that you would a poem, and you don't get to go back, right? And I know you have experience because you did that Twitter BuzzFeed show, AM to DM. Mm-hmm. So you know how to do it, but I'm just wondering how this long form sort of conversation thing differs for you, a person who loves a revision and an edit.
Right. I mean, what helps tremendously is that the other 2 hosts, Zach and Sam, are my friends. Mm-hmm. And I trust them. They're all so brilliant.
Yeah.
And so to me, I'm okay being quiet. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm okay listening or framing a conversation as and I'll tell them, I actually don't know what's going on. And so then kind of switching posture. I think long form conversation gets tricky when you are forced or forcing yourself out of your depths for way beyond. We can banter for, a little bit. But when you're honey, I am 5 minutes. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. You know what I mean? And so my goal is to never just be talking about something I have no idea about,
right.
if because I think curiosity and even, self-aware, ignorance, but you want to do better. I think that's a rich line of inquiry, Mm-hmm. And so, I think it helps that I trust them and they're incredibly interesting. So I'm always game to hear what they have to say. But also I know that I can just be myself in the conversation. I guess maybe that's my secret, right? Whether it's the poem or whether it's the conversation, I think I do a pretty good job of compartmentalizing and just drilling in and just in that very narrow bubble that I create, just being fully myself there.
Yeah. Well, the show is so good. I really love it. I feel like there's a bazillion podcasts, but it definitely fills a space that I haven't heard before, and so and plus you're all really smart, interesting, and funny people. And I'm always very curious what you all have to say about things. Just sometimes something will happen and I'm I hope Saeed tweets about this. I just want to know,
That makes me so happy. No, I mean, I think our friendship is special. And, we still, when it comes to media, we don't have enough Black people and queer people being given the opportunity to speak in an authoritative way about things beyond queerness and pop culture. So I love that we can talk about Renaissance and we can talk about bodies like we do this week. But we're also talking seriously about Biden administration, public policy, or the monkeypox vaccine rollout, which is a mess, And so, it's just, we deserve this. We all deserve this. And I love that you love it.
I Tracy. Do. I really do. I'm kind of a super fan of yours, which is a little awkward to say because you're here, but it's true. Anyways, we don't have to talk about this, but
I appreciate it.
Okay, so we have to wrap up, unfortunately, but I could do this forever.
We literally could just talk all day.
I know. I feel like we're going to have to be friends. Next time you're in LA, let's get together with Sam and I'll go to dinner or something.
I would love that.
Okay, anyways. This is a fucked up question to ask you because your book hasn't come out yet officially, but I'm going to do it because I'm that kind of chaos.
Okay.
What comes next for you? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's allowed.
I'm trying to be curious and open and really asking myself. I don't know. I can tell you it's not going to be another poetry collection. Okay. But beyond that, I don't know.
Great.
We'll see.
That's great. That's a perfect answer. For people who love this collection, Alive at the End of the World, what other books would you recommend to them?
Oh, gosh. Magical Negro by Morgan Parker. Mm-hmm. How to Write an Autobiography by Alexander Chee. Afro-Pessimism by Frank B. Walderson III informs this book. That is a very challenging book. It is a very thorny, and I think he would say that too. It's a thorny, challenging book. I mean, it's called Afro-Pessimism.
Yeah.
But I think it's beautiful, and to me, it felt liberating. It felt liberating to read someone willing to tear into these ideas, because I think Black people, we just end up having to hold a lot back. What else? I do love Finna by Nate Marshall. Yeah. Absolutely enjoyed that book. I enjoy him. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
That's great.
Is that a good list?
That's a great list. That's a great list. Many overlaps with the show, so people will know that Alexander Chee and Nate was a guest earlier this year.
Let's be real, and this ain't no secret to the girls. The girls who get it. Alexander Chee is the mother. I am fortunate to have a lot of great, mentors and colleagues, and Alexander Chee is someone who has really raised a generation of writers.
Yeah.
In so many ways. Many ways.
So you don't know this, and as we're recording, my listeners will know this. This was our book club pick for August. So the episode will come out, and I talk about the book with Ingrid Rojas Contreras, who's also sort of been, raised in the school of Alexander Chee, if you will. Yes. And it's interesting because I'm not a writer. And so while I could appreciate Alexander Chee as a writer, I think his writing is incredible, a lot of that book didn't mean as much for me because I don't write. And so I couldn't understand some of the things he was navigating. And we talk a lot about it. I'm a person who loves books because I love reading. And so things that are instructive for writing don't always translate to me because I'm like, don't show me your work. Right. I just want to read.
And it is. And it's very him showing his work. It's kind of, you're right. It's a love letter to the form, the personal essay form,
writing
and
to writers. Yeah. And so there's parts of it that I just absolutely loved, but it didn't hit me in the way. But the thing that I love about Alexander Chee is what you're saying. How many people whose work I love, he has been influential for, how he's always supporting other authors and authors of color specifically. He really is the person that so many people turn to and cite, and what an incredible person to be. Yeah. He's center vital. Of the web.
I remember finding one of his short stories. It's the story of this blackbird. I can't remember the title. It's very sexy and erotic and morally slippery. I remember finding it as a junior in college. I'm at Western Kentucky University, going through everything you see me going through in the book. But you need to know that in the background of those chapters, I had printed off one of Alexander Chee's short stories, and I would just carry it around with me, and it was just like a Bible on the go for me. Just incredible.
I feel like the other person who's like that for a lot of people who have come on the show is Kiese Layman.
Yes.
He's the other person that is always cited as this person believed in me, they mentored me, they helped me. And I think it's really incredible to be alive at the time where people, it makes me
emotional. And I would add How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America. That feels very much Kiese.
Totally.
What a person.
Love him. Okay, last question. Okay. If you could have one person, dead or alive, read this book, who would you want it to be?
Oh my gosh. I think my mother. I don't know what she would think about it. She would always get on me for cursing and stuff like that, but God, the conversations we could have. Because at the end of the day, I love writing. I love publishing books, but the conversations they make possible are one of the great joys of my career. And so, and for her, she's everything. She still is everything to me. And so, I would love to get to talk with her about these poems.
I love that so much. All right, everyone. This has been an hour with Saeed Jones, author of Alive at the End of the World, which you all must read. And if you haven't read the memoir yet, How We Fight for Our Lives, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast, because you're not welcome here until you read that book. It's just so good.
I'm patient.
So good. Oh,
the memoir is hunting you down. It'll get
it's
you.
Coming for you. Saeed, thank you so much for being here.
Tracy, thank you. This was a delight.
And everyone else, we will see you in the stacks. All right, everyone, thank you so much for listening, and thank you to Saeed Jones for being our guest. I'd also like to say thank you to Dali Farr and Jasmine Alexander Brookings for helping to make this interview possible. Remember, Lisa Lucas will be joining us next week on September 28th to discuss our book club pick, The Trees by Percival Everett. A thriller and a real page-turner. You do not want to miss it. If you love the show and want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/thestacks and join the Stacks Pack. Make sure you're subscribed to The Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts, be sure to leave us a rating and a review. For more from The Stacks, follow us on Instagram @TheStacksPod and on Twitter @TheStacksPod_, and check out our website, thestackspodcast.com. This episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Lauren Tyree. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tigirigis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.